The Hunts had rules too, but it was like they'd agreed to a whole different set of them. Stealing wasn't a big deal, and neither was lying, as long as you were doing it to strangers. Paying debts was right. Being loyal to your family was right. "We hide in plain sight," Gran said. "Do you know what that means?" Around them, the house seemed very quiet. Even the birds outside the window had stopped chirping. Joan shook her head. The warmth was still there, but Gran's expression turned serious. "It means that no one can know what the Hunts are," she said. "What you are." She lowered her voice. "You must never tell anyone about monsters." That's a quote from Only a Monster by Vanessa Len. This is YA Book Chat, and I'm your host, Leah Stuhler. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of YA Book Chat. Thank you so much for being here and for listening. And as always, thank you especially to my Patreon members. I really appreciate your support each month. Today, I am kind of doing something new today. I have an author interview for you, but I have a debut author for you. We're going to be talking about her brand new, very first YA novel that has just recently been published. And I'm very excited because this book is so fantastic. And all of you need to rush out and buy this book and read it if you have not had the privilege of doing so already. So today we are going to be talking about the brand new book, Only a Monster by Vanessa Len. And I am very privileged to have Vanessa here with me today. Hi, Vanessa. Welcome to YA Book Chat.
Hi. So great to be here. Thank you for that amazing introduction.
Of course. I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Well, why don't we start by you just telling everyone a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Vanessa Len. I'm an educational editor from Melbourne, Australia. And Only a Monster is my very first novel, and it has just come out as we're recording this. So it's been a very exciting time for me.
I can imagine. I mean, it's only been a couple of weeks that it's been out. So
yes, it's so true. Yes, it's only been out a couple of weeks.
Well, how does it feel to have your very first young adult novel be published?
Completely surreal. I feel like when I was writing it, I would often say to my critique partners, I feel like I'm making a boat, but I don't know if it will float. I don't know if, it will resonate with anybody. So it feels extremely surreal that not only is it published, but it's been published all around the world, not, people that I might never meet are reading this book.
Well, good. I'm glad. And it's very exciting. Like I've been seeing, as it's been released in all the different countries. And it was just, it was released in quite a few countries before in the US this week, finally. What has this process been like for you with writing your manuscript and then finding a publisher and just the whole thing?
It's felt really long for me. Before I even started writing the manuscript, I was kind of developing the whole world, the characters, the plot, I guess, in my head. So after I'd kind of developed it, I spent another 4 years writing the manuscript, and then everything became a really fast whirlwind. I got my agent fairly quickly, and then we went on submission fairly quickly, and then it sold fairly quickly. And then so kind of felt like a really long process, then a sudden whirlwind. That's how I would describe it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it's been really eye-opening as well. I guess I'm an educational editor, so I kind of thought I knew how publishing worked, but I found that fiction is really different, in exciting ways. It's really just different being on the other side, not being the editor, being the author. So I would say it's been surprising and exciting.
Good. I find it's odd too for me because I used to be an actor and now I'm a drama teacher, but I also direct. And when I first started teaching and directing, it was really weird to be on the other side of the table and casting a show instead of being the one auditioning for it. So
your mind really is thinking about so many different things compared to when you're on the other side of the table.
Yeah, it's really different. Well, has there been anything about the process that's really surprised you, especially since you've kind of had the reverse experience this time around?
Yeah, I would say that even though I thought I knew about publishing, I was still so surprised by how many people would end up being involved in the book, and kind of really moved. I felt like I hadn't realized how many people would be, doing so much work, not just in America, but also in Australia, in the UK, or, internationally. I don't know. It was really touching because I felt like I'd put in so much work, and then I could see so many other people putting in so much work. I don't know, but yeah, that really surprised me.
Yeah, I mean, I I was looking the other day at one of the publishing companies' websites, and I was just curious, and I was like, oh, I'm going to look at their like job availability, what jobs they have available. And
Yeah.
as I was looking through the job list, and kind of reading the different job descriptions, I was like, wow, there's a lot more people involved in this than I ever realized too
I
on that
know
side.
there's so many people.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was doing the acknowledgements, there was multiple people in the same, well, probably not the same role, but in like similar roles as well. So that was really amazing to me, and many of those I hadn't actually met. So that was also really amazing that they had been involved in the book, kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah. Well, why don't we talk about the book now? Why don't you tell everyone what Only a Monster is all about?
So, Only a Monster is about a monster girl named Joan, whose summer is absolutely ruined when the cute guy at work turns out to be a monster slayer. It's got a time travel battle. It's got enemy soulmates. It's got this Captain America-like heroic antagonist. It's got a cute dog.
Mhm.
I would describe it as maybe Doctor Who meets Shadowhunters.
Oh, yes, that is a very good way to describe it. I would agree with that, definitely. I was very intrigued. So when I got sent the arc of the book, and I was reading the description of it, I was really intrigued by it already just from that description. And then when I started reading it, it really pulled me in right away. And I was like, wow, I haven't read anything like this before. It's really it's a very unique story, I feel like.
I'm so thrilled that you think that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I loved it. And I think everybody listening right now needs to go and read it because it was really good.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell me about where the idea for the story came from?
Yeah, so I guess the very earliest seeds of the idea came from, I guess, my own earliest experiences of watching kind of big blockbuster films and TV shows. When I was growing up, I would really love those kinds of, films where the heroes are really clearly demarcated from the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
But I would find that the heroes of those films very rarely looked like me, kind of half Asian from the diaspora. But sometimes the bad guys would look like me. And that would be the only time I would see myself on screen, say for that movie. Just these guys would show up just for a fight scene, and then the hero would like beat them up. And yeah, I've got this line in the book about how in movies, after the bad guys get killed, the camera follows the hero. But I would find, in my own viewing experience, I would just really notice these people lying dead on the ground or just lying on the ground beaten up, while the camera moved away. And I feel like that kind of gave me the idea, wouldn't it be interesting to write about one of those very classic heroes from those movies, like a very decent, upright, good hero as portrayed by the narrative, but they're fighting against you rather than for you. So that was the idea of this monster versus monster slayer as the premise.
Yeah. And I really like that too, because, our main character, Joan, she's a monster, and then we have a monster slayer. So she's not really the hero of the story at all.
No,
she's
she
the
is not,
anti-hero.
yeah.
So, I mean, And again, like you said, we're so used to watching TV shows or movies or even reading books where the hero is the center of the story, not the monster or the villain. So what was it like creating a main character who is an anti-hero?
Yeah, so I'm always really interested when you're presented with different sides in a narrative that I guess like unreconcilable, mutually unreconcilable, and yet you can kind of understand the perspectives of both sides. So I had wanted to create a story where you're following this monster girl, Joan, and you kind of understand everything that she does at the same time that you maybe kind of understand that everything that the hero is doing. So that was what I was thinking in terms of creating an anti-hero, a character who maybe isn't always doing objectively, the moral thing, although, maybe who can say? Well, I don't know. I think I think very often she is probably doing the morally wrong thing. But I hope that sometimes it's, at least understandable why she's doing what she's doing.
I felt like it was, as I was reading it, I felt like she had some tough decisions to make, but
she did.
It was for me, it was understandable why she made a lot of those decisions. And, part of it is because of her bond that she has with her family. And because her love with her family is really what drives her throughout the whole book. And, she has these very strong relationships with them. What was it like kind of developing those strong family relationships and putting that family theme in the book?
I'm so glad you noticed that, because it was really important to me to, I guess, give Joan a family background where, you get to meet the family maybe briefly at the beginning, but you can at least feel how much Joan loves them and how much they love Joan. Because I had really wanted to create these stakes so that when you find out that this family are monsters, and then you find out that there's a monster slayer in Joan's life, and you can kind of feel the stakes at that point, because that even though Joan has just discovered that her family are monsters, she really loves them very much, and they love her. And suddenly the fact that there's a monster slayer on the loose is tense and frightening, I hope.
It is. It definitely was. And another reason that I really liked that, and why that kind of family theme stood out to me too, was because I feel like a lot of times we do have to make hard choices when it comes to our families. Like we can be in situations where we love our families really, a lot. Maybe somebody makes a bad decision. You have to decide what to do, or in a situation like hers where she just wants to protect her family and keep them safe and do everything she can for them. I think it's great to see. I always enjoy when I see like really strong family bonds like that.
I always like that too. Yeah. And I feel like I kind of wanted to give her that really strong conflicted feeling as well. Like, she loves them very much, but at the same time, she doesn't like what they do as monsters. So she's really torn about that as well.
Another thing that I loved about this book was how Joan's family are monsters. Like what it is that they do, Joan and her family, that makes them be considered monsters. They steal time in order to be able to time travel. And I thought that was just a really unique, and again, something I've not read in a story before. So I was just kind of curious how the idea for having them steal time from people's lives came about, as opposed to having them being monsters in a different way.
We'll be back after a quick break. Are you passionate about writing or just love the arts? Tune in to the Poetry Podcast with A. Discover the latest trends in the industry, enjoy insightful book reviews, participate in Q&As, listen to captivating poetry readings, and get inspired by author interviews. We release episodes on the first 3 Thursdays of each month. Don't miss out. Come check us out at the Poetry Podcast with A.
So as the premise of Monsters came first, and then I was really thinking, I wanted to kind of create an original creature, like an original fantasy creature. And I was like, what could make these monsters monstrous? And while I was thinking about that, I had, before I even started really developing anything else, written myself this big list of all my favorite things, like my favorite shows, my favorite books, my favorite moments in those books and shows, my favorite characters, just because I'd known this would take me a while to write, and I had really wanted to put things in the book that I would really enjoy myself if I were a reader.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this big list of things, and then I started to see patterns. And so I would see, I guess I like Doctor Who. I guess I like all these other time travel things. And I guess I really like time travel. I had just put things together from that list, and I thought the time travel one was really standing out to me as something that I would really enjoy. So I thought, what if these monsters what if they steal human life and then use it to time travel? So that's where that idea came from.
Okay. And I love time travel as well. So that made this book really fun for me. I also love that so when they were traveling back in time, like the first things that popped in my head was all the Back to the Future. And you have a Back to the Future reference in the book too, which I absolutely loved. And because he's like, what are you talking about? What's Back to the Future? And I'm like, oh my goodness. But I loved that. And all I could keep thinking of was all of these things from Back to the Future that had been drilled into my head, like you can't see yourself. You can't see yourself in the same time period, or like it'll set everything off into oblivion and it'll be horrible. So I love the time travel aspect of this. I've always thought it was really fun. I'm also a big Doctor Who fan. Back to the Future, all of the time travel.
I love it. I feel like the time travel fans are definitely responding to the book. I feel like we're just like, oh, I really love time travel, but it's like you don't often get to see it. So I know that I'm really excited when I get to see it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun because there's so much you can do with it. I loved, as an 80s baby myself, I loved the fact that the decade that you picked for them to go to was the 90s. And I love how when they're trying to figure out what year they've landed in, I love this quote that you have where one of the characters says, big hair, but not giant hair, and no neon. So not in the 80s, no Rachel haircut either. So it must be pre-Friends. So I just love like all those,
the analysis, how you figuring out where when you are.
Yes. And it's so true because, it's true. Big hair in the 90s, but not huge, like in the 80s, the hairstyles, the Rachel haircut was really big. And the descriptions of it too, kind of gave me like an Empire Records movie type vibe.
Yes. I've had a little Easter egg for Empire Records in there. I put my main character Joan in Liv Tyler's outfit.
Yes, I did notice that, and I loved that. Empire Records has always been one of my favorite movies.
I think it was actually a little anachronistic because that was 1994 and I sent them back to 1993. But they're time travelers.
It's all right.
They might have seen the film anyway.
That's right. Was there a reason why you chose that particular decade?
I want to say it's because I knew the 90s would be back on trend the year it got published, but that is absolutely not true because it took so long to write and develop. Actually, what I had wanted to do was just put Joan, I guess, in a time enough before her own birth that she would just have no allies at all in that time period. Her father, who originally came from Malaysia, was still in Malaysia at the time that she landed, and she doesn't know where the other side of the family is. She's got no one except this frenemy monster named Aaron, and I always like it when people are forced into proximity. So
yes.
Yes. So going back to the 90s kind of forced them into proximity.
It does. I love the like frenemies and, being forced together, people being forced together trope. A friend of mine and I were just talking about this because I'm reading a book where the two main characters are forced into a fake relationship. And I was like, well, fake relationships always lead to real ones. We all love that trope. So
I love it. I love fake
love when that happens. And I love Aaron and Joan's frenemies relationship and how they work together and how that develops. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give anything away. But I'll just say that it's a great relationship to discover and see how it goes throughout the book.
I feel like they start out, I guess, as enemies, but I think they actually find that they have quite a lot in common unexpectedly. I think they're kind of actually quite similar in personality, which I'm sure they would both hate to think about.
Yes, they probably would, which is why I'm sure they don't acknowledge it at all, but they've got to know. So I'm curious, when we get to book 2, are we going to, and I know this book just came out, but I just feel like I need to ask this. When we get to book 2, are we going to travel to a different decade?
Oh, I think I can say yes. But we may also be traveling much further afield than a different decade.
Ooh, all right. Very exciting. Okay. So speaking of relationships, as I was reading this book, I was like, man, how do I even put this relationship with Joan and the monster hunter into a trope? Like, I was like, it's not really enemies to lovers because they didn't know they were enemies when they met. They didn't know until after, but then they kind of become that way. So I was like, I don't even know how to describe this love trope. How would you describe it?
I'm not sure. Maybe I would say friends to almost, to a crush, to enemies, to maybe spoilers.
Oh my goodness. It's so
very
crazy.
Complicated.
It is, but I find that I enjoy complicated relationships like that.
Me too.
It brings more meat to the story,
I agree. And I always, as I said, really like it when you can just see them all having very different perspectives that you can't understand how any of these characters could possibly reconcile. I just find that, kind of juicy and interesting.
Did you find parts of like developing these relationships, like the frenemies relationship and then this interesting love trope? Did you find anything like challenging about trying to bring that together? Because you've got these people who are not supposed to like each other or love each other, and they're thrown in these worlds together. It seems very tricky.
Yeah. So when I was thinking about those relationships, because Joan is actually half monster and half human, I was really thinking about it almost thematically, like she's quite torn within her own identity as kind of monster and human. And I had wanted to have these 2 guys on either side of her, one fully a monster, one human, one quite amoral, one, moral in his own way. And just to have that as part of her, I guess, kind of a thematic conflict, as well as, these relationships that she's having. So I just love enemies so much that I just made them both enemies at the beginning.
Well, I love that too. I mean, I thought it was really fun because I never knew where things were going to go. Like I even had moments when I was reading it where I thought, wait, is this going to turn into like a weird love triangle? Like, is Aaron going to develop feelings for her? It was hard to tell. That was an interesting, which makes me wonder about book 2.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. I know. Book 1 has only just been released.
Just telling you, yeah.
It's so, I'm telling you, I love when I get, advanced readers copies of books and I can read these books ahead of time. And, I have the chance to interview the authors, but then I also think, oh man, it just came out and now I have to wait an entire year to see what happens next.
Whereas I feel like I've seen a movie a year in advance of everybody else. So I have to keep being like, oh wait, that's from book 2. Don't say that.
Because you already know what happens.
I already know.
Man, is it just going to be 2 books or is it going to be more?
It's actually going to be 3 books.
3 books. Okay.
When I had done all that development work at the beginning, before I wrote the manuscript, I had thought it would be 1 book. But then as soon as I started writing the book, I just realized, oh no, that much plot does not fit in 1 book. That does not fit in 1 book. So in my mind, this story of book 1 was going to be just part of a story of a book. Wow. But then I realized, it's not. Yeah, I guess I was thinking almost like in TV show seasons, but you just can't fit that much plot in 1 book. So
that's all right. It gives the readers more to read and more to look forward to and to love. So that's really exciting as a reader.
Thank you.
Sometimes I feel like I just want to stand alone, but most of the time I read series because I just want so much more of the world, and I love being pulled into the world of the story.
I'm the same. I just love that feeling of just a long immersion in a world with characters. I just love spending a lot of time with them.
Especially because most of the time I always find I'm really sad when it ends, and then I feel at a loss and I'm like, I don't know what to do now.
Then you read fan fiction, I suppose.
Sometimes, yes, I do. Or I hope that, a TV show is developed or something. Sometimes you get lucky on that, but not always. What was maybe the most challenging part of writing Only a Monster?
It was definitely the beginning. I had known by the time I started writing the book, I knew everything that happened after the inciting incident. So I knew everything that happened after Joan discovers that Nick is a monster slayer. Okay. But everything before that, there was actually a lot to set up, from the stakes around Joan's family to the fact that they're monsters, that, the mechanics of, at least some of the mechanics of time travel and how they're monsters. So I think I wrote that beginning maybe 25 times. I was still writing it.
Wow.
I was still writing it in line edits. I was still rewriting it in copy edits. There was just so much to set up, so many parameters. And then every now and then, if I had set up the wrong promise, it was like it got really boring as soon as the revelation came, strangely. So it was like it was really hard to create a version that had all the information in it, and didn't make the next section boring for some reason.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can imagine that's really hard to set up, because there was a lot that happens in this book that you need a backstory for, that you need a good setup for. So I can definitely see how that would be really challenging.
It's very hard. I think maybe especially as a first-time novelist, I just didn't have, I was kind of learning the tools as I was writing the book. Yes. Maybe if I had written my 8th book, I would have been like, oh, that's just easy. I could easily do that.
By the time you get there, it's just going to be like old hat for you. You're going to have it all figured out by then. Do you feel like you took more of it's from what I'm hearing, it sounds like you probably had to take more of like a plotter type approach to it rather than a pantser and just kind of writing off the seat of your pants?
Yeah, I think, I guess in the development stage, I was almost wanting to develop a world that, I don't know, that I could feel as like almost like a fandom world, the kind of world that I would like to kind of, imaginatively inhabit. So I feel like that part of it was quite not pantsy, but it was definitely a long development stage where, I was just letting ideas come and discarding the ones that didn't feel right. And then I had to make a story out of that. So yeah, I definitely was in the plot, I guess, in that plotting arena for that part of it, where I was trying to figure out, how does a plot fit into this world? How do all these characters interact in a way that really makes sense? But having said that, I didn't write it chronologically. I wrote some big milestone scenes before I really had a plot. So it was things like, the first time Joan travels, that scene in the maze with Aaron was one of the early ones. So it was just kind of emotional scenes or scenes that I thought would be interesting between characters. And then I kind of put those into a plot. So maybe a hybrid between plotting and pantsing.
Okay. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. And I love hearing too, how you're talking about how you incorporated different elements of things that you like too,
Yeah.
as a reader. And, I recently interviewed Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, and they kind of said the same thing, where they like to put a lot of their interests and things that they really like into their stories. And then, because it helps them kind of develop it more and see it from a reader's perspective too.
Yeah, I feel like, not everything is going to be for everyone, but I feel like if you write something that you like super enjoy with, characters you like, tropes you like, hopefully there'll be other people that will resonate with as well. And at least you'll really enjoy writing it, if nothing else.
Yes. At least you've written something for you,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you put all that work into it.
Yeah, exactly.
A friend of mine said to me one day, she said, Leah, I feel like with all of the reading of these young adult books that you've done and with your podcast and how you study all these books, that you could totally write something. I said, what are you talking about? She was like,
I'm sure you could. I feel like
I feel
being a reader is, yeah,
but I don't feel like I could. I've written 2 children's picture books, but I feel like that is probably like the level that I can do. I write children. I've done that, and I write for a blog, but I'm like, that's probably the extent of it for me. Like, there's always so many deep.
I feel like if you wanted to, though, if you wanted to, you could. I feel like everybody starts their first. Well, certainly I started my first novel and just in a place of like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know. I have no idea how to do this.
And I do want to say, I want to, give you props and compliment you on this too, because I feel like sometimes I've read novels where it was somebody's first novel. It was their debut novel. And it feels like that, like, not that it's bad, but it has just a different feel to it. Like, you can tell that the writer is kind of still developing, their technique. But I felt like with Only a Monster, like, to me, it felt like it was already there. Like, for me reading it, if I didn't know, I would have been like, oh, how many novels has she written already? Because this is
thank you.
That's what it felt like to me. So I feel like,
Yay.
you did a really great job of that.
Thank you.
Fantastic debut novel. You're welcome.
Thank you.
So we find out, okay, so I feel like there were still a lot of secrets and different things yet to be revealed. There's like one kind of major thing that I was like hoping we were going to find out. And then the end of the book came and I went, wait a minute. Okay, well, maybe that's going to be in book 2 then. So are there going to be some more like secrets and information revealed to us coming in the next book? Okay, good.
Definitely. Yes. I think one of the things that I kind of had I had the hero's journey structure for book 1, but I had layered over the top of that kind of a structure of revelation of information. Mm-hmm. And that was the part where I was like, I can't fit this into one book. There was so many pieces of information I still wanted to reveal, but I just didn't, there wasn't room to let them breathe in book 1. So it had to stretch out into the next books.
Okay. And that makes sense. It does feel, I'm excited because it does feel like from reading book 1 that there's going to be a lot more information coming about Joan and her family and monsters in general, even. So
yes.
Okay, good. I'm very intrigued to see where it goes.
I don't think anyone's guessed one of the big secrets of book 2 yet. I feel like all the seeds are in book 1, so I'm really curious if anyone's going to guess.
Yeah, I have some theories, but nothing I'm going to say right now, so as not to ruin book 1 for everybody. But I just also definitely had some big questions at the end still in my brain. Like, I was kind of like, I have no idea what that's going to be, Sometimes I read a book and I feel like I can figure out exactly where it's going to go or what the end of the storyline is going to be. And other times I just feel clueless at the end, but that's a good thing. Like, that means
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. You did your job really well when I feel clueless. So.
Amazing.
Well, good.
I was just going to say, I was going to say, if people are interested in the plotting of twists and turns, I really highly recommend Vampire Diaries. Like actually, even the TV show, just studying what they're doing, because sometimes my critique partners would be like, right, what is the coolest thing that could possibly happen after this episode? And that would be how we would start to figure out their plot twists, because before that, we had no clue how they were doing this miracle of plotting.
Oh, yeah, that is. So I've never read Vampire Diaries, and I've never watched Vampire Diaries.
It is a plotting masterclass. It is unreal.
I mean, I feel like I've missed out by not getting to that point yet. With me, I tend to have this like love-hate relationship with YA vampire stories.
That makes sense.
It's like either I really like it or I hate them. So I'm trying to but I do keep hearing that Vampire Diaries is good. So I may need to check that one out. The one that I read that I liked, and I actually was given the spin-off series. I've read the spin-off series first. I've still not actually read the original series. But I read Bloodlines by Rochelle Mead, which the original series for that is Vampire Academy.
Oh, yeah. I think I only had seen the movie of Vampire Academy, which I loved. I feel like that was really an underrated film. It was really good.
Yes. No, I enjoyed that series. So, but I have heard a lot of good things, and it was kind of the same thing because Bloodlines at least is 6 books. Wow. So you want to talk about plotting and adding all kinds of plot lines. Like it's just thing after thing after thing. And I'm like, how long is this going to be? But
amazing.
Yeah. So I'll definitely have to check out Vampire Diaries then.
Oh, it's a plotting masterclass. It's almost like you're watching it and you don't realize all the things that they're setting up all the time. Amazing.
Okay. And I love when that happens. Yes. Because then there's like these little, as a reader, I want to be surprised. I want those little surprises. I want those like shocking revelations where I'm like, oh my gosh. And I have to like put the book down for a minute, those are my favorite books when that happens.
Me too.
Well, is there anything else that you want to maybe just tell everyone about the book or about your writing process?
No, just that I'm so excited that it's finally out in the world. It's been such a long journey for me, and it's really exciting that it's on the shelves. People can hold it in their hand just like me. It's a physical thing. I'm just really, really happy and really excited.
Well, great. And I'm so very excited for you because it really is a fantastic book, and I loved it. I read through this thing so fast, cover to cover. I was like,
thank you.
You're welcome. And speaking of covers, both the US and the UK covers are amazing.
Aren't they beautiful?
Oh my goodness.
I feel so lucky. Oh, they're beautiful.
I've seen people commenting on them and how, they like this cover better than that one, but I look at them both and I think I can't decide.
Yeah, I love them both. Yeah. The US and Canadian cover, I guess, was illustrated by a Melbourne artist called Evian Tan. And the UK cover was illustrated by a Malaysian artist called Kelly Chong. And they're both just unbelievable. They're beautiful.
Very nice. They are gorgeous. It's one of those books where it makes you, with the covers, it makes you want to buy multiple copies so that you can have all the covers.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I am that person. I definitely have multiple copies of books downstairs on my bookcase with, different covers.
Same.
Oh, it's horrible. I mean, it's not horrible. Like it's great, but it's also not so nice on my bank account sometimes.
No. And sometimes I'll realize that when I bought, I didn't realize I already had that book because it had a different cover.
Yes. And I just realized, so I just finished reading 6 Crimson Cranes by Vanessa Len.
Oh, yes. Beautiful cover.
It is. I have the US cover, which I love as well. And then I've seen the UK cover, which is also gorgeous. Well, she just dropped the cover reveal for her new
I
one.
saw it.
And I was
Actually,
like,
her cover artist is the same as mine for the UK.
Oh, really?
Like 2 very different styles, but the same artist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I saw like the US cover is gorgeous, but then I saw the UK
Beautiful.
cover as well. And I was like, oh man, I might
Stunning,
have to order me
stunning.
one of those too. It's just, they're just so gorgeous. And I'm definitely that person who is a sucker for beautiful cover art. So
me too.
I did, now that I'm remembering, I did want to ask you one other thing. Because when we were talking earlier, it jogged into my head about this, because you were talking about how, you know, when you were growing up or you'd watch movies, you wouldn't see much representation of your culture in like the hero, but as the villain too.
Yeah.
What is your background?
I'm half Chinese Malaysian, half Maltese, but I was born in Australia. So I guess, as is really very common, I'm from multiple cultures, and I've grown up, you know, with another culture again. And I guess that's kind of what made me write Joan in that way as well, kind of as somebody from multiple cultures moving through different worlds. I'm really drawn to those kinds of characters.
And I think I love seeing those kinds of characters, because I feel like it's really important that we get representation for multiple cultures and countries, you know, all over.
Yes. Yes, definitely. When I was growing up, I don't think I can't remember reading anyone with a background like mine. You know, certainly not as the hero, occasionally maybe as a sidekick. But you know, I feel like I just always wished that I could read about someone kind of like me, just having this big adventure. So that was definitely, I would say, one of the main reasons why I wanted to write this book, just to add a little bit more representation into this sphere. But having said that, you know, I feel like this is such a golden age of kind of diaspora Asian fantasy. There's so many amazing stories out there at the moment, and hopefully, you know, many more to come. So yeah, a kind of exciting time.
It really is. I love seeing all of these stories come out about with Asian backgrounds. And I've read quite a few of them recently, and they're just so stunning and such amazing stories. And for me too, you know, it opens my eyes, you know, as a white American woman, it opens my eyes up to different cultures and things that I never knew. And I love that. Like, I don't want to be this person who's like stuck in her own culture and not learning about other people.
I love that too. Yeah. I love reading about, I guess, fantasies from, you know, that are inspired by different cultures. I don't know. It's really fun to have that added to this pantheon of fantasy that I know as well.
Like, because Six Crimson Cranes, actually.
Yes.
I mean, because it's based on a fairy tale, but she puts the Asian culture and background into it. And it fit that story so beautifully and so perfectly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, definitely. I know. It just, I don't know. I feel like there were some early writers that really opened up this space for all of us. And I'm so grateful to them. I feel like it's so hard being, you know, one of the first and the pioneers. And it's like perhaps a little easier for me to be publishing now than it would have been even 10 years ago.
Yes, I agree.
Publishing this kind of story, at least. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, thinking about just when I was growing up and the books that I was reading as a young adolescent, so different, so different,
Yeah,
so very
so different.
White. So very, you know, like the biggest crazy thing was when with the Babysitters Club, when Claudia Kishi was introduced. Like, that was the most culture that I had in my books at that time, you know, because it just wasn't there. So it's great how much it's evolved.
Yeah. I definitely had those experiences where you would find just one character in a series and you'd be so excited, like, oh my gosh, that person has a similar background. How exciting. So I know what it's like to feel like you're not represented in books. So yeah, it was really important to me to write a character that had kind of a similar background to mine.
That's good. And I'm glad that you wrote her that way and that, you know, we're able to explore that with Joan. And I love that we're discovering along with her who she is and about her life. And I am really looking forward to discovering more about who she is in the next book.
Thank you.
Well, it has been so great having you here, Vanessa. I am so excited for you. I absolutely loved this book, and I am hoping for you that it does really well. And if you guys all of you who are listening, you need to go out and get this book, Only a Monster. It is such a fantastic story, and I promise you that you will not regret it. So thank you so much, Vanessa, for being here today.
Thank you so much, Leah. This was such a pleasure.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun.
I had a lot of fun as well. Great questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much for everybody for listening, and we will chat again soon. Today's episode featured the book Only a Monster by Vanessa Len. A special thank you to Vanessa for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you as well to Lauren Levite at HarperCollins for setting up this interview. Be sure to follow YA Book Chat on Facebook and Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. YA Book Chat was created by, is hosted, and edited by me, Leah Stuhler.